In this lesson, we're going to discuss the 3ds Max interface. So if this is the first time that you've ever opened up this application, you'll notice that we have several components inside of this interface. And this can be very, very intimidating at first. So what I'm going to do is we're going to break down the interface into different components and give you an overview of some of the different tools in those components just to make this a lot easier to get started inside of 3ds Max. So let's go ahead and go up to our first component, and this is called the menu bar. Now the menu bar holds a lot of different tools, and it also holds some of our common tasks that we're going to perform in each of our individual projects. So let's go ahead and go to this 3ds Max icon and open that, and you'll see things like opening a new project, opening an existing project, and even saving our projects. Now we also have several different other options that are available in here. But we want to keep this lesson very simple, so we're not going to discuss each individual tool and each individual option throughout this lesson. So let's go ahead and just click in this empty space here to get rid of that menu. And you'll notice that we have kind of a shortcut bar here that we can access, like new scene, open file, and save file, that was available inside of our menu. So this is just a way to quickly access those. Now we also have our menus in our menu bar. And we have things like Create, where we can actually create geometry using this menu. Now I do want you to know that the tools that are available inside of this menu are available throughout the rest of the interface. So not all of the tools are available, but most of them are. Now let's go ahead and move to our next section, and this is called the toolbar. Now inside the toolbar holds a lot of our different tools that are available inside of 3ds Max, and we're not going to go over each individual tool like I said, but we will go over each set and just kind of give you a brief overview of those sets. So our first set that we have is called the linking set, and this is where we can actually link objects together. Now we have what's called the selection set, and this is how we can select objects inside of 3ds Max, and we have some options that allow us to select in different ways. Now we have another set that's called the transform set, and this is where we can move, rotate, and scale our objects, or transform our objects. And then we have some options that are available to where we can transform in different ways. Now our next major set that we have is called the snap set. And this allows us to move, rotate, and scale objects, but allow us to snap to specific values. So for example, if we turn on our angle snap tool here, and then we go to our rotate tool, this will allow us to rotate to specific values, or snap to a specific value. So let's go ahead and rotate this teapot, and you'll see this number right here. It's in yellow, it's kind of hard to see there, but you'll see that it's snapping every 5 degrees. So this will allow you to get exact angles. So let's say we wanted to snap this to 90 degrees exactly. We could just do that by using our angle snap toggle. So let's go ahead and turn that off, and let's go back to our select object here. And the next set that we want to talk about is called our alignment set. And we have things like mirror, where we can mirror an object on a specific axis, and we can actually align objects to other objects as well. Now we have a very powerful tool next, and this is called Manage Layers. And this allows us to manage our scenes and organize our scenes and keep them very nice and neat. Now we could do things like, if we had a cityscape or something like that, we could actually put buildings on one layer, we could put people on another layer, and we could put things like destruction and rubble on another layer as well. So that keeps things really nice and organized. Now our next set that we have is called graph editors. And this set is really useful with animation. So we'll discuss that in a later lesson in this course. Our next tool that we have is called the material editor. And this allows us to apply materials on top of objects inside of our scene. So in this case, I have an orange material that's been applied to this teapot. And we just access those and create those materials inside of our material editor. Now our final set that we have in our toolbar is called the render set. And this allows us to basically make images or videos out of our 3D scenes. So if I hit this quick render, this will bring up an image that has been rendered from our 3D scene. So let's go ahead and close this out. And the next section that we're going to talk about is called the ribbon. And inside the ribbon we have things like our graphite modeling tools, our freeform modeling tools, selection tools, and object paint tools. Now we're not going to discuss these inside of this lesson or even in this course, but if you want to find some more information, you can actually access one of our free videos where we discuss the graphite modeling tools in 3ds Max, and then we also have using the freeform modeling tools inside of 3ds Max available as well. Now let's go ahead and move over to our far right side here, and this is actually called the command panel. And the command panel can be simply explained by folders, if you want to think of it that way. So we have things like the create panel, our modify panel, and as we switch to these different panels, you'll notice that we get different options. Okay? So we have our hierarchy panel, motion panel, display panel, and utilities panel. So if we go back to our create panel, you'll notice inside of here that we have different sets inside of our create panel. So we have things like geometry, and you'll notice as we change to shapes we get different options. So that's why I say it's easiest to understand in a folder based sense. So if we have shapes, this is where we can create 2D objects, and we have lights where we can create lights, cameras, helpers, space warps, and systems. Now as we go through these options change, but you'll notice that we have a drop-down box that is available in each one of these as well. And we can actually change our options, or what's in our section here, by going to a different section in our drop-down box. So for example, our standard primitives, we have box, sphere, and cylinder. And if we go to extended primitives, we have things like headerette, chamfer box, and oil tank. So like I said, it's really easy to understand the command panel if you think of it as folders. Okay? Now, throughout this course, we're going to be discussing some of the different options in the create panel and the modify panel. We really won't get into the hierarchy, motion, display, or utilities until we start discussing these different panels in a different course. So you could really go to the Introduction to 3ds Max 2011 if you want to find more about these panels. Now, I want to move on to this next section, and this is called our viewports. And by default, we have these 4 viewports that are available. So we have our left, we have our top, and we have our front viewport. Now we also have our perspective, and you'll notice that this one looks a little bit different than the rest. We have basically in our left, top, and front, we have our wireframe teapot. And in our perspective, we can actually see the different surfaces of this teapot. Okay? And that's simply because we are in a wireframe mode in these different viewports. So you can see wireframe labeled here, and then we have realistic labeled in our perspective. So I just wanted to answer that question in case that came up for you. Now, we're going to be discussing the viewports in the next lesson, but I want to go ahead and finish this up here. So let's go to our next component of our interface, and this is called the track bar. And on our track bar, we have what's called a timeline, and on our timeline, we can actually hold keyframes that holds information about animations. Okay. Now we also have our time slider to where we can actually move through time on this timeline. And we also have several components to this animation section. So for example, like auto key and set key, to where we can actually create those keyframes. Now we also have our playback section that allows us to basically play our timeline in real time. Okay, so let's just move that back to 0. And the final section that we have available on our interface is called the viewport navigation tools. And this allows us to navigate throughout our viewports inside of 3ds Max. So it allows us to zoom, allows us to pan in our viewport, and even orbit around our objects. And those are just a couple of the tools that are available. So in the next lesson, we're going to get into navigating our viewports. So we'll do that in the next lesson.